We could. I don't know that I've got it all figured out, but I'm happy to talk about it.
The thing is, you brought it up, so I feel not so bad about bringing it up myself, but a little social media birdie showed me a picture of a sonogram on someone's Insta feed, and holy cow, you're having your first child?
I am. It's exciting stuff.
Oh my gosh. Well, you're talking to a dad of 3 daughters, one of whom's in college, another one who's going in the fall, and then one who's going to be a junior in high school. And oh my God, you're going into the best time period because they're little and they love you and they listen to you and they depend on you. And I'm just feeling like a dad who's kind of like a coccyx on the body of my family, which is the vestigial tail that nobody needs anymore.
That's the worst. No, I'm sure you're more important. The thing about that bone though is when it hurts, everything suffers.
So what you're saying is I am the pain in the butt that everybody suffers from in my family.
I think I mean you're the core upon which all other things are connected.
Well, I'm going to go with that. And I'm so happy to have you on the podcast again, Melanie, because every time I see you or we meet and we talk, I always get very excited because you're smart. You're informed and you're opinionated. My God, you're opinionated in what I think of as a smart way. You know, some people have opinions and like to say, well, it's just an opinion. It's like, no, I'm not interested in opinions. I'm interested in very highly informed opinions. And you, my friend, certainly provide those on a regular basis. But first, before we get started, I just got to say congratulations to you and your husband on the impending baby, because what an exciting transition in your life.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm going to loop it back to the conversation about what we're talking about on the Nonfiction Brand podcast. Oh my gosh, aren't you glad that you have a flexible life that you've built for yourself via the creation of a personal brand that allows you to field incoming speaking opportunities, workshops, all that stuff. And you aren't beholden to someone else's schedule and what they think you should be doing for them.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I think there are pros and cons to both sides of this. The wonderful part about building your own life, structuring your own business, and choosing how you spend your days is that I get to choose how long my maternity leave is. I get to choose whether I work from home and when I am back on the road and whether I decide to have a desk in the nursery. All those choices are up to me. Me and my husband, you know, we're allowed to kind of make those choices for ourselves. He runs his own business too, so we're both in that really lucky position. You can't really have that conversation, though, without acknowledging the fact that no one's going to pay me my maternity leave but me. And so there is this sort of double-edged sword, if you will, where I've also got to figure out what does my business look like during that time? Because I can't just press pause. You know, there are still podcasts to go on. There are still blog posts to write. There are still inquiries to answer. And, you know, no one's going to do that for me. I can't just put my business within a away message for, 3 to 5 months and assume that it will be there in full form when I come back. So this obviously, being my first child, it'll be a new experience to figure all this out. But I'm really, really blessed that I have so many colleagues who have gone through this in some form or another as moms or as dads in the recent past and are, sharing awesome advice with me on the regular. And so I'm building a plan as we speak to figure out what that whole time period will look like.
And there, my gentle listeners, is the glass half full and half empty at the same time of building a personal brand that allows you to create your own solopreneur business or your own small business that hopefully will grow and scale in size. It's like watching swells come in off the ocean. Some are tiny and some are mammoth. Well, you got a big one coming in the form of a new baby, and you've got a whole bunch of ups and downs along the way as you kind of negotiate a brand new lifestyle, not only for yourself, but your family and most certainly your business. But still, I can't help but say, you're so much better off than working for somebody else because you now have the opportunities because you've done the diligence and the hard work up front. And for anyone who hasn't read Rotoma, the ROI of Social Media Top of Mind, or gotten to know you via the podcast previously, let me tell you that Melanie hustles. I mean, her luck is based on hustle. And in the book, Rotoma, I referred to her as my social media spirit animal. And every time I watch her feed, I continue to learn from it and get inspiration from it. and consider what I'm doing to be a pale comparison. But that's okay, because I don't need to be right up next to you running as fast as I can. I can benefit from everything you're doing by casting a careful, observant, learning-oriented eye at what you're doing. And certainly that's a lot of what Nonfiction Brandversity is all about. So you've heard me recommend following Melanie Deziel before. I'm going to say it again. That's Deziel as in not diesel fuel, but Deziel, Melanie. You can see her online. She's big on Instagram. Her storyfuel.co website has everything you need to know about her. So definitely check that out. But mostly listen to this podcast and listen to what she has to say regarding where she is, who she is, what she's doing, and how she's using her personal brand to allow her to do everything we just talked about. Have a child, build a business, have the type of life you want to have. I mean, congratulations.
Thanks.
I'm guessing the only way you can fully sleep right now, and by the way, sleep will become a distant friend of yours in the future, but the only way you can sleep right now is that you've created a platform for what you're doing so effectively in advance of this blessed event.
Yeah. I think that, you mentioned in the intro that one of the reasons you love chatting with me is because I have opinions. I like to think that I'm also sort of aggressively transparent about things. I think it's sort of a duty, for any of us who have any sort of platform or any sort of recognition for something. It's very easy for you to quickly become inaccessible to people. From the outside, particularly when you're curating an online brand, your life starts to look really perfect and really put together, and people don't see themselves in that. They can't relate to you. And worse, they might feel worse about themselves because of that, right? So I try to be super honest that, like I was saying before, I don't have it all figured out. It's something that I've stressed about is, how do I make these changes in my life, in my business? How do I prepare my business for this reality? And especially one of the things we don't always talk about, at a time when you're more emotional than usual, you're probably more tired than usual, you may be going through a number of different health issues or home preparation issues. We've moved in the last 2 months to make room for a growing family. So all of those are big, major life stressors that tend to weigh on you, take up your time. So it's a lot to be dealing with at once. And so, when people are like, oh, I'm so glad that, you can build your own life. I'm like, I'm actively building it. I wish that I could give you a roadmap. I think the thing that's been key for me is being really honest with myself about what's important to me. I know that for me, I want to play a very active role in my children's life. I want to be home as much as I can and spend time with them. But I also want to be a good example for the things we're talking about here, sort of architecting your own life, for building something that makes you happy, for pursuing the things that allow you to help others in a way that fulfills you. And I can't do that unless I continue in some way to do the work that I'm doing. So trying to find the balance between those things. I haven't struck that perfect balance yet, but I think, again, being clear on what's important to you and what you want to achieve, it's absolutely key, because if you're just sort of thinking of business ideas, I get that a lot. Hey, I need a side hustle for $500 a month. What should I do? I can't tell you the answer to that. There's a million ways, to start a business, to run a brand, to build a company. You have to be clear on what's important to you and what your priorities are, because you need to build around that. So that's what I've been trying to focus on, is figure out what are my new priorities going to be, so that I can adjust my business and my life to fit that.
That's really interesting, because a concept that I've been toying with is the difference between a guide and a guru. And a lot of people online, they want a guru to climb the mountain and get the meaning of life, or the meaning of how I'm going to make a 7-digit income, overnight. How am I going to be able to lean up against that Lamborghini with the stacks of cash? I mean, that's what I want. So I guess I need to talk to a guru. And what you're saying, if I am interpreting it correctly, is if you're looking for a guru, Melanie Deziel's not the guru, but she is one heck of a guide, because you can take what you've done, show people how to do it, and share the successes back and forth, and maybe some of the tweaking that's necessary, the same way that a coach or a guide will help people achieve their best potential on whatever trail they happen to be taking. That's what I'm doing with you. I'm sorry, I'm not paying you a cent, but I'm totally drafting off you, kind of like that car in NASCAR that's 2 inches behind. Well,
right?
maybe you've lapped me several times, but you may be 5 laps ahead of me, but I'm still on your tail as close as I can get because I'm learning so much valuable stuff simply by observing and paying attention.
Well, you're being very generous and very kind, and I appreciate that. But I think it's also key for us to note that, we're all running a number of different races at the same time. It would be very easy for me to have a conversation with you where I say, look, I've never hosted a single episode of my own podcast. I have no idea how to do that. How do I produce it? How do I find guests? I mean, that would be fully outside of my experience, and I would absolutely have to be the car right behind you, taking some of the aerodynamics away from you to learn in that scenario. So I hope that, that you can see folks like me or someone who's a step ahead of you in one thing and recognize that you are steps ahead of others in different areas too. And there's always a chance to kind of trade that knowledge to meet people who are at different levels. And I think we can often learn just as much from people who are not as far along as we are. I try my best to have a lot of conversations with students when I can, who are working on projects or, graduating and not sure where to go, because I hear about new challenges and new perspectives, about new technologies, about, new situations that I'm not aware of because I'm not looking at it through those eyes anymore. So, I think there's value in these conversations no matter what level someone is at. If you can find a way to tap into their perspective, can be extremely valuable to building your own knowledge base.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by Nonfiction Brandversity. It's a free Facebook group dedicated to the art and craft of personal branding, and we'd like to invite you. Just search Nonfiction Brandversity on Facebook and ask to join. You're in, guaranteed. I can't wait to see you on campus. I love that because I'm going to interpret it and say what you're really saying is that for those out there who want to be taught, understand that everybody's a teacher in one way or another. So as you said, maybe I've got some tips I can give you vis-a-vis podcasting. I can't give you any tips when it comes to creating a fine rye bread, but there are people out there who are bakers who could absolutely take you through that.
Oh, yeah.
And so anybody who feels like they're just in class their entire life, no, look around and look at what you know. And this is a huge killer tip for people who want to build their personal brands online. Take that thing which you are expert at and let people know. It's really that simple. And how do you let people know? You demonstrate it via social media, which, by the way, is still free, or at least there's free levels of every single channel out there. And I know people who are doing incredible business for themselves, and they aren't paying for the extra Sales Navigator version of LinkedIn or any of the paid versions of anything else. They're using and exploiting to the nth degree the free tools that are out there. And how many times do I have to scream this at people? They're free. This power tool set that is out there and usable by you is the equivalent of money sitting on a table waiting for you. If you're not doing this stuff, it's that proverbial you left money on the table.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here to tell you, Melanie's not leaving a cent on the table because you are maxing out everything. I was just poking around your webpage because I'm drafting off you, NASCAR lady. I'm drafting off your back bumper, and I'm looking at stuff going, oh, I'm going to rip that off. Or I'm not going to literally plagiarize it.
Inspired.
Well, exactly. I'm looking at your website right now, and this is something that I'm kicking myself because I have not incorporated that into my website. And it says very simply, want to pick my brain? Don't need a full consulting package, but want a bit of insight on a brand storytelling, content marketing, or related media challenge you're facing? And then it goes on to say that you can literally create an appointment with you for a 30-minute, 60-minute call. And then there's a button down at the bottom of that says schedule a call. What happens when I hit that button? It takes me to a scheduling site where I see very clearly your picture, a little bit of description about who you are and what you do, and then a very clear $5 a minute request a call.
Yep.
Wow. all of a sudden someone says, you mean for $15, I could at least get 3 minutes to run something by you?
Yeah.
The answer would be yes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so, it's the tool that you're talking about is called clarity.fm. And I recommend that everyone use it because, as you just said, it's very easy to plug into your site. You can just create a hyperlink or whatever. You set up your profile on Clarity. You set your per minute rate or your per hour rate, whatever works for you. Mine is set high intentionally because I find that kind of work is not necessarily super productive for either party. So I want it to be people who are really committed, who are going to come prepared, and who are going to get the most they can out of that time. But this was coming from a place of, I recognize that not everybody who reaches out to me needs a consultant for, a month, for 3 months or 6 months. Sometimes they have a very isolated issue, and I wanted to give them a very easy way to do that didn't involve having to email me back and forth 4 or 5 times, send them an invoice, have them come back to me. It could get very complicated more than it was worth. So for me, finding a tool that could take care of that was super easy. There's a couple other cool things on my site that I think you might like too. So if you go to storyfuel.co/podcast details, you will find a page where I have treated the act of going on a podcast as seriously as I treat the act of getting booked for a speaking gig. So it's storyfuel.co/podcast details. And you'll see that it says, want Melanie on your podcast. And it includes all the kind of information. And DP, you can let me know if anything's missing here that you would probably ask for or want to know if you were considering having me as a guest. So it tells you some of the things I like to talk about. It tells you some of the podcasts I've been on. There's testimonials from past hosts who have had me on their show. So it allows you a chance to kind of be treated as a podcast host, like you're important, like you're a potential client, like you're someone that is getting, attention and resources that are, specific for you. And one thing I've heard from podcast guests is no one ever has that page. I've never been sent to a specific page for hosts that might want to bring me on a page or bring me on a show. So trying to find those places where you could better serve your audience, that's not something you're going to find in my website. It's not clogging up my website with, a million different, landing pages on a navigation bar, but it's something that exists there that I can send people to if they have a very specific type of question. So that's a new project I just built, and I'm excited about that one.
Well, and it's so flippin' easy and brilliant at the same time because you're doing what I tell everybody to do, which is demonstrate who you are. So by creating this page that treats podcast hosts as a potential client, or put it this way, it gives you a customer service vector for podcast hosts. You say, hey, I value you and your time, and I'm going to show you that I understand what you need. I mean, you're talking about the type of service that you want to talk about. Melanie is there to serve your audience, not pitch them. Wow. Thank you very much. Because as a podcast host, sometimes you almost have to say, oh, by the way, I know you have a new book. And I will definitely talk about it, but it can't be about the whole book. This is not an infomercial. So you saying you understand that is, wow, thank you. Even things like great sound quality. She'll be in a quiet environment with access to several headset and mic options. Thank you. Because there are some people who are like, I'm here on the highway. And it sounds like absolute crap. Easy setup. Melanie has experience recording podcast interviews via Skype, Zoom, Zencaster, and other systems. You're covering all the bases. So someone like me goes, oh, great. I don't have to tell you the difference between a crappy quality mic and a good quality mic, or why we're doing it this way and not that way. You already get that. Wow. That's demonstration. You have just demonstrated to me that you're valuable. Thank you. You're welcome. That demonstration.
and one of the things that's important too is like, this was a weird little idea I had about 2 months ago where I thought, you know what, I treat getting booked on a stage for a speaking gig very seriously. And I do all this work. I create special pages, but I see the value in being on a podcast as well. And yet I don't treat it the same way. Why is that? And I couldn't find an example of the kind of page I was looking for. So all I did was model it almost exactly off my speaker page. That's the model that I had. And what I did is I actually talked to a lot of different podcast hosts and asked them questions. What are the things that make your life easier? What are the things that good guests do differently? I really sort of interviewed interviewed them to ask what would they be looking for on this page, because I'm not a podcast host. As we talked about earlier, I've never hosted a single podcast solo by myself. So I don't know what should be on that page. So I've gone through and asked my audience. So that's another thing you can do if you're trying to build any of these specialized pages, if you're trying to appeal to a new audience, or you're trying to create a new asset that's of use for a particular group, spend some time, whether it's sending out a poll, creating a quiz of some kind, or just calling them, texting them, having a conversation. How could I be more helpful for you? What resources are helpful for you? What would make your life easier? What are the things that keep you up at night? Trying to figure out what those things are so you can create assets and copy and posts and content that answer that allay their fears and make them comfortable. Creating content in response to your audience needs is one of the things that I talk about probably too much, but I think I was trying to kind of live that principle in creating pages like that.
Frequent listeners of this podcast will recognize that one of the big strategies we talk about is taking your frequently asked questions and turning them into, in the case of one of the formulations I came up with, your FAQ should be your VAQ, video answered questions. So your frequently asked questions, turn them one at a time into discrete videos.
Yep.
So if all of a sudden you have 15 video answers, that's great. You now have 15 pieces of content that can go on YouTube, that can be fed one at a time onto LinkedIn, that can be on your website, that it can be served up any number of different ways. And guess what? People ask frequently asked questions because they have them. And they don't stop having them. You can never assume that people know who you are, what you do, and how you do it. You have to continually talk about it, and ideally in slightly different ways depending on your audience. And again, I'm going to go right to your website, which is storyfuel.co. And you've got consulting for publishers, for brands, and then want to pick my brain. I mean, right there, you're telling people, hey, if you're a publisher, this is how we can talk. This is how we might be able to work together. Same thing for brands, et cetera. So you make it really easy for people to get an idea without too much detail.
Yeah.
Again, I'm looking at the copy here, and I'm estimating that none of the copy is more than 150 words, maybe 200 words in a couple of different paragraphs. Short paragraphs, optimized for web, and very simple to engage with. Enough to tell the story, but not too much.
Well, you have to acknowledge that when we love ourselves, right? We love to talk about ourselves. We could write tons of copy for our website. People who are coming to your website are looking for something specific. That means they're probably going to have to sort through most of your website content that is not relevant to get to that one thing, whether it's a specific blog post, a product, a phone number, whatever it is. So you want to make it as easy as possible for them to get to the thing they want. Now, once they're there, you should provide more information, right? So if someone, for example, is looking for a specific type of product, have quick product descriptions. And then once they get into that product, if it's the one they're looking for, then they'll read more, or if that's the blog post they want, then they'll read more. But those excerpts, those small little snippets are really key to helping them get to the place where they want to be. It's really funny that we're talking about the structure of my website, because I'm actually in the middle of building, as I mentioned, some new pages and probably restructuring the way it goes and the way it's organized to try to make it that even easier, make it even easier to navigate to the place where you want to be. So there may be a new version for us to look at by the time some of these folks go and check it out, if they do.
That's okay, because I love the fact that I'm raving about how easy it is, and your concentration is on even making it easier. Not for you to tell your story, but for your readers to digest. And that is such a big thing. And social media is such a great opportunity for you if you take it out of your head and put it through someone else's eyes. How are they going to consume it? How are they going to chew on it, digest it? Is it too much? Is it too little? Can you give them a taste and then tell them to go elsewhere for the full meal? All these things are predicated on you getting out of your own head and into the eyeballs and the ears of your audiences. And again, you do a great job at that. So I just want to point that out. And again, that is storyfuel.co. If you haven't checked it out yet, listeners, go do it now, because you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
or what I've somehow updated it to since then, one or the other.
Well, it's here's the thing. You've got this beautiful diamond. You can probably polish it a little bit, but it's still a diamond,
It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really
a few
shiny.
More facets, a little bit more sparkly, and it's going to be good.
I've got one tool for folks if they are trying. We were talking a lot about questions, about frequently asked questions, about creating content that answers those questions. This is another thing that I talk about a lot, a tool that I don't think I mentioned the last time I was here. I hope I didn't, but just in case, it can't hurt for a reminder. There is a tool called Answer the Public. AnswerThePublic.com. It is a really cool tool. You can type in any set of keywords and it will tell you what are the queries that people search related to that. Now, if you are an SEO guru, you're all into search engine optimization, by all means, use much better, more sophisticated, more expensive tools. If you are not, though, this is very, very approachable. You could go to this website, type in your name, your product, your industry, a few keywords related to your product or service, and you will see people asking all kinds of questions. How questions, why questions, what questions, right? All different kinds. And that can give you fuel for what you should be creating content about or what you should be creating pages about in order to capture that search, that search traffic, of course, but also to recognize what your audience is actually looking for. So I do a lot of this with regards to brand storytelling and content marketing to try to inform some of the content that we're working on internally now. The funniest thing that I discovered is, just for good measure, I always pop in my company name and my own name. Now, there aren't a tremendous amount of searches related to my first, my name or my company name. It's often more tangential searches. But the one that comes up time and again is people seem to type in my name and then the word age. People are apparently trying to use the internet to determine how old I am. I don't know if this is a uniquely female thing that people do, but I've started to think, what's the funny way I could capture that, right? I'm thinking what I'm going to do is actually create a hidden page on my website that's a live update that says exactly how old I am, that just kind of captures that, because if people are searching for it, they want to know. So I might as well make a funny video that says, apparently this is super important for you to know. So I wanted you to know that I'm listening and here's the information that you need, and put some sort of live ticker in there that has down to the second exactly how old I am. Because I just think it would be funny and sort of acknowledging what people are looking for. But you may find unexpected things when you use a tool like that, AnswerThePublic.com, just to see what people are searching as it pertains to you, your products, your services.
Oh my God, that is hilarious. But what a great tip. I want to come back to that in the next episode that will be airing next week, because as usual, Melanie and I get on the horn and all of a sudden my 25-ish minute podcast is becoming closer to 30 or 35. So I do want to cap off this episode by saying thank you to Melanie Deziel for being on. I want to remind everybody that you can join Nonfiction Brandversity, the free Facebook group, simply by searching Nonfiction Brandversity on Facebook, ask to join, and you are in. I would also love for you guys to like, subscribe, refer, and most importantly, review the Nonfiction Brand podcast, because that helps other people find us. But mostly, I'm going to say it again, you got to check out storyfuel.co, Melanie's website, to find out even more about her, and soon, even all the way down to her age to the nanosecond. I want to say thank you again to Melanie for being on the podcast, and you're going to hear her again next week, every Monday. And for now, I'm DP Knudten for the Nonfiction Brand podcast, and she is
Melanie Deziel.
And I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.